Discover 9 sinister paranormal encounters, exposed cursed footage that haunts the unexplained. Sarah sat in her living room, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows on the walls, sending a shiver down her spine. The whispers of the night crept in through the open windows, clawing at her sanity. Just last month, she lost her job, the world around her grinding down into a fine powder of uncertainty. Now, she was juggling 2 low-paying gigs while raising her 2 young boys, and the familiar comfort of her suburban home had turned suffocating. But it was the death of Mr. Abernathy, her elderly neighbor, that sent a dark ripple through her ordinary life. Unease knotted in her stomach. At night, the once soothing sounds of crickets became harbingers of doom. She lay awake, the heavy silence punctured by strange moans, like the earth itself was mourning something lost. Some nights, her boys awoke screaming, clutching their blankets as though trying to shield themselves from unseen threats. "Just nightmares," she whispered, chastising herself for getting lost in her own imagination, but the flicker of doubt crackled in her mind. One stormy evening, while rummaging through the attic, Sarah unearthed an old camcorder, the bulk of it shrouded in dust and shadows. She didn't recognize why a tingle of dread swept over her as she tucked it under her arm, but curiosity drew her to the living room. With her boys hovering eagerly, she pressed play. What unfolded was like pure madness on screen, grainy footage revealing her neighborhood at night, with Abernathy, his voice a raspy echo, chanting words that hung heavy with darkness. The air thickened as ghastly figures slipped in and out of sight. Terror clawed at her. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She pressed skip, desperate to escape the clutches of the unknown, but the chaos on screen tugged insistently. Abernathy's dark rituals illuminated the tragic lineage entwined with her picturesque neighborhood. Accidents, disappearances, the specters of past sorrows danced in the periphery of their lives. The sensation of being watched clawed at her guts, igniting an instinctive hunger for the truth. Yet, in seeking answers, she found only cold shoulders. The skepticism of authorities turned her stomach, neighbors' eyes averted as she asked for help, as if she wore a shroud of suspicion. Isolation wrapped around her tighter than the night, whispers of disapproval echoing in her desperate searches. And still, her boys woke crying, their innocent faces pale, haunted by terrors that twisted the comfort of their childhood into something grotesque. Time slipped away as dread seeped into the very walls of their home. The shadows she once found peace in now pulsed with a life of their own. She could feel a sinister hold creeping. Ever closer darkness had wrapped around her family, and the dawning realization hit hard. The greatest threats were not just the specters from Abernathy's tape, but the seemingly ordinary faces that surrounded her, the very people she once trusted. In this facade of suburban safety, the horror lurked, waiting, watching, and whispering a chilling promise. What if the culprits were the ones she waved to, the parents in line at school? With her heart pounding and fear coursing through her veins, she prepared to confront whatever darkness was threatening her family. The line between reality and the supernatural bled together, leaving Sarah with one unresolved question. Who could she trust when the nightmare was more human than she feared? Breath caught in her throat, Sarah swung the camcorder toward her boys. They were sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide, letting the visuals pull them into a whirlpool of terror. "What's wrong?" she whispered, tugging on their little shoulders. Jacob blinked back tears. "Mommy, why is Abernathy talking to those people? They don't look nice." The images flickered, casting shadows that twisted with every frame. Her pulse quickened, the weight of a looming dread settling over her shoulders. The hooded figures looked too familiar, faces resembling people she waved to every day. The neighbor's sinister smile suddenly held a brand new meaning. Were they involved? The thought rippled through her, igniting a cold sweat on her skin. "Turn it off," she shouted, arm trembling as she reached out to the device. The boys jumped, eyes darting between her and the screen. where Abernathy continued his chant. The air twisted, pulsing with an energy that felt unnatural. With a sudden push, she pressed the off button. Darkness engulfed the room, thick as smoke. "What have we done?" she murmured, fear gripping her heart. She would have preferred the silence, but the weight of her thoughts drowned her. "I need to talk to someone," she resolved, clutching her boys tightly. A neighbor might provide answers. Without thinking twice, she donned her jacket, hooking her fingers protectively around Jacob and Micah as they stepped into the night. The streets felt foreign, shadows stretching unnaturally beneath the dim streetlights. Every flicker of light seemed to stir something in the air, unsettling. She could almost hear whispers drift through the twilight lingering behind her. Just a walk, she told herself, convincing no one. They arrived at Mrs. Henderson's house, a place where friendly conversations used to happen over steaming cups of coffee. Tonight, she felt only dread hovering over her skin. Knocking softly, she strained to hear any signs of life within. Footsteps approached, each one echoing eerily in the silence. "You need to help me," Sarah blurted as Mrs. Henderson opened the door, her expression a mask of weary skepticism. "Something's not right." Mrs. Henderson glanced at the boys, annoyance flickering across her face. "What nonsense is this?" I saw Abernathy's tape." The words tangled in her throat, her voice trembling. Mrs. Henderson's demeanor shifted. "You shouldn't have done that. No one should see what's South buried beneath this place." "Beneath this place?" Sarah repeated, panic clawing up her chest. The older woman hesitated. "Think carefully, dear. You can't unsee it." Before Sarah could respond, a loud thud resonated from behind Mrs. Henderson, a sound that jolted her to the core. The woman turned pale, glancing back into her dim hallway. "Stay here," she ordered and slipped away into the shadows. Fear flooded Sarah's senses as she pushed past curiosity. What lies in the dark? The boys, brimming with trepidation, huddled closer to their mother. They heard something, a creak, a whisper, like a faint echo drawing them in. Mommy Jacob tugged on her arm, his voice a mere tremor. "Maybe we should go." Her instincts screamed at her to flee, yet unease twisted with determination in her chest. She needed answers. What was Mrs. Henderson hiding? What would their secrets unveil? She needed to confront the truth, but the looming dread told her it might come at a cost. "Just a moment," she murmured, barely believing her own words. Slowly, she stepped through the darkness, every second stretching into eternity as shadows loomed closer, threatening to swallow her whole. What she would find next might rewrite the very fabric of her existence. Outside, the wind howled, carrying on at a chilling suggestion that it would not end well. A scream rang out. The atmosphere thickened, and Sarah tensed. What would she discover next, buried in the heart of her own neighborhood? What horror awaited her just around the next turn? As Sarah stepped deeper into the darkened hallway, a chill wrapped itself around her like a slow-acting poison. Her heart raced, a frantic drumbeat against the walls of her chest. The whispering crescendoed, a dissonant chorus that filled the silence, pulling her toward the source of the disturbance. "Mommy, please." Jacob's voice was faint, edged with panic. Micah clung to her leg, his tiny fingers digging into her jeans. She turned, assessing her boys' fear-streaked faces. In that moment, they were all she could see, her anchors in the suffocating darkness. "Stay close," she whispered, the words almost lost in the thick air. They stepped forward, the hardwood creaking beneath their weight, each sound echoing like a warning. As they reached the end of the hall, Sarah paused. The door to Mrs. Henderson's living room lay ajar, a thin sliver of orange light spilling out into the hallway, battling against the shadows. It danced oddly, flickering like a restless spirit. Mommy Micah whimpered, squeezing tighter. She took a breath, steadied herself, and pushed the door open. Inside, the room looked normal, yet something felt dreadfully amiss. There were no signs of Mrs. Henderson. Instead, the atmosphere felt suffocated, as if the very walls held their breath, waiting. Then she saw it, the shape in the corner barely illuminated by the light. A figure, shrouded in darkness, sat hunched over a table covered in odd trinkets and symbols, torn photographs, candles, and strange objects that buzzed with their own energy. "Mrs. Henderson?" Sarah called, but her voice sounded distant, swallowed by the room. The figure moved slightly, revealing an elongated shadow rather than a face. "No," It rasped, a voice distorted by static like an old radio struggling to tune in. "You should not be here." Panic clawed up Sarah's throat, but she forced herself to stand her ground. "Where's Mrs. Henderson?" she demanded, though her voice trembled. "She is lost," the figure answered, raising a hand that appeared more skeletal than human. "Her fate is bound, just as yours will be, should you proceed." "What do you mean?" Jacob cried, fear leaking like a wound. "Leave her be," the figure hissed, the shadows around it flickering violently. "You know nothing." In that moment, an icy wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging them into darkness. The boys gasped, and Sarah felt the thin veil of her courage begin to unravel. "Mommy, help!" Micah cried, his voice raw with fear. "Hush!" Sarah hushed them, backing away slowly, her eyes never leaving the dark figure that loomed closer, the air thickening with despair. Her instincts screamed to flee, but she couldn't. What was happening around her was too significant, too shrouded in secrecy for her to abandon. What lies beneath this place? She mustered the courage to ask, though she expected no real answer. The figure's voice dropped to a whisper, sending chills racing down her spine. "What lies beneath is a choice, a darkness that calls to you. Open your eyes, and you will know all." With a sharp thud, the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Shadows darted like insects through the gaps, smearing against the walls, blurring reality. Panic culminated in Sarah's throat, a choking grip that demanded action. What terrible truth lay buried here? "Mommy!" Jacob screamed as the shadows began to stretch, reaching out like a net closing around them. She knew they had crossed a line, deep into murky waters where answers could only lead to nightmares. But she wouldn't let this end here. The truth was clawing to be set free, even if it meant facing unimaginable horrors. "Hold on," she shouted, as the walls started to pulse with a heartbeat all their own. Outside, the howl of the wind transformed into a haunting melody, and for a split second, she feared it was summoning more than she could manage. With a surge of resolve, she turned to the boys, shaking but determined. "We need to find a way out." But in that same moment, the figure lunged, casting a shadow that consumed them. "Welcome to the darkness," it whispered, and the world around them faded into a swirl of terror. What waited on the other side could change everything she thought she knew. Would she be able to escape this world? Would they? Or would they remain trapped in the horrifying embrace of the unknown? The darkness swallowed them whole, like a monstrous beast closing its jaws around prey. Sarah's breath quickened, panic clawing at her insides as reality shifted. Everything shimmered, distorted and twisted, like a funhouse mirror reflecting a nightmare. "Mommy!" Jacob's voice echoed, an urgent call that cut through the dark. While she felt the shadows pressing in on her, the weight of them made her skin crawl. Something tugged at her heart, an instinct to protect her boys at all costs. "Hold on to me," she shouted, reaching for Jacob with one hand while clutching Micah's tiny hand with the other. The cold that engulfed them felt alive, a creeping sensation that wormed through her body. She could almost taste the bitterness of fear on her tongue. Then they heard it, a low, vibrating hum that penetrated the darkness. It was rhythmic, like a heartbeat, syncing with the pulsing walls. As Sarah struggled to focus, she realized it came not from outside, but from deep within the shadows themselves. "Mommy!" Jacob whimpered, and her heart tore for him. The shadows whispered just behind her, taunting, promising visions of dread that nudged and scraped against her resolve. She turned her gaze to the dark figure, now more distinct, but still faceless. Ominous fingers curled menacingly. "Choice awaits you," it hissed, the voice a chorus of whispers twisted into something grotesque. "Dare you embrace it? Get away from us." Sarah spat, her voice a fragile lance aimed at the monstrosity. It only cackled in response, the sound reverberating off the walls, sending shivers racing down her spine. Then the whispers changed. They weren't just sounds. They morphed into images, half-formed thoughts wrapping around her mind. She glimpsed her past flashes of Jacob's first steps, Micah's laughter, memories crowded by shadows now mockingly reinterpreting them. "See how fragile it all is." The figure sneered, and with a swing of its hand, it sent a wave of darkness crashing into Sarah, forcing her back against the table covered in tokens of another realm. Fears she thought buried came rushing back, failures, choices she made, paths she turned down. The walls pulsed with those regrets, feeding off her despair until she couldn't distinguish between reality and this malevolent realm. No, no, this couldn't happen. Not here. Not now. Boys, listen to me. She gritted her teeth, the urgency crackling in her voice. We have to stand together. Whatever happens, don't let them in. They want you to choose, the figure taunted, its form shifting closer, fingers twitching and beckoning, as if seducing her with the promise of revelation. Just give in, and all will be revealed. Mommy, Micah squeaked, pressing against her as shadows coiled rhythmically like snakes. Find the light, Sarah whispered as her resolve solidified. We can't give them what they want. It was all she could do. She needed a plan, a way to turn the tide. Then, in a moment of silent clarity amidst the chaos, she spotted a flickering glimmer near the back of the room. A tiny ball of light flickered defiantly, fighting against the encroaching darkness. It pulsed faintly, beckoning her. Follow me, she urged, darting toward the light, her heart hammering in her chest, driving through the suffocating fear. The shadows shrieked a horrible sound that echoed in her bones as they lashed out, desperate to grasp her. Don't look back, she cried, tearing her gaze from the terrifying figure that loomed. She could feel the boys behind her, their little hands squeezing tighter, their breaths quickening. As they reached the light, its warmth enveloped them, crumbling the uncertainty and darkness like paper and fire. But just as they thought they were safe, the pulse of the shadows drew closer, quicker, wrapping around them again. Mommy, Jacob's voice trembled, and Sarah's heart raced. What lay behind the curtain of light? Was it safety, or did it lead to something worse? Let us go, she shouted, plunging into the light, spirit ignited by hope. But just before they vanished, she heard the figure laugh one last time, and it sent a shiver down her spine. You cannot escape the choice forever. The pulse of darkness behind them faded, but the echo of that statement hung heavily in the air, teasing a question: what awaited them in the light? The light swallowed them, washing over their skin like a warm summer breeze. For a moment, Sarah felt hope wrap around her like a comforting blanket. But as reality solidified around them, a new wave of dread washed over her. They stood in a vast expanse, a formless void shimmering with flecks of light. The darkness they had escaped clung to the edges like a broken promise. Where are we? Jacob whispered, his wide eyes darting around with uncertainty. I don't know, sweetie. Her heart pounded, each beat echoing in her ears. But we have to stick together. Ahead of them, the air shimmered and shifted, forming shadows that danced like specters in the gloom. The warmth they'd felt began to dissipate, replaced by a biting cold that seeped into her bones. The boys pressed closer, their small bodies trembling against her. Then came the whispers again, soft yet insistent, creeping into her mind like ivy winding around a tree. Sarah, you've chosen the way. What will you give up? No, she shouted, her voice cracking. I want to give in. But the shadows deepened, swirling like a tempest. Dark clouds churned above them, swirling ominously. Then she saw a glimpse of something familiar but twisted. It flickered in and out of existence, a reflection of her life distorted by fear and regret. Mommy, look. Micah pointed. The little boy's voice trembled, and Sarah followed his gaze. There, caught in the midst of the swirling darkness, appeared figures' memories she wished to forget, faces of love now twisted by the shadows of doubt. Her parents, always disappointed in her, friends she had lost, their voices echoing their betrayals. Choose, Sarah. The whispers became louder, crashing against her like waves. In this realm, you must make a sacrifice. Step back, she cried, pulling her boys behind her. Fear wrapped around her heart like vice grips. We want to choose anything. You can't take us. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted, rumbling like a live creature. Sarah felt the world sway as the figures moved closer, their mouths moving without sound, like puppets on invisible strings. The faces formed into one grotesque amalgamation, shouting silent accusations that clawed at her sanity. Her breath quickened. Stay by me. But the shadows swirled and began to shape into more distinct forms, dangerous specters with jagged teeth and hollow, hungry eyes. They hovered just beyond the edge of the light, hungry for her despair. Mommy, I'm scared, Jacob cried out, his fingers digging into her arm, clinging for dear life. I know, baby, I know, she breathed out, fighting off the encroaching terror. The creatures lunged forward, a horde that sent waves of heat washing over the three of them. The chill in the air was replaced by heat that radiated from deep within the shadows, pulling at her with an insatiable force. Give us what we want. The amalgam of memories roared, the cacophony matching the raging heartbeat of the darkness. No, Sarah shouted defiantly, adrenaline fueling her fight. She felt the warmth deep inside her, a fierce love for her children, a fierce determination. But the shadows laughed, ringing through her mind, pouring all of her fears back at her. You think you have a choice? You're already lost, you just don't know it yet. Suddenly, the light flickered once, twice, and darkness reared back as if preparing to pounce. How much longer could they hold out? Mommy? Micah whimpered. With newfound clarity, Sarah took a deep breath, stepping forward into the light, pulling her boys with her. We have to find another way. There must be another door. But that laugh had echoed. The shadows crept closer, relentless. Or perhaps you've come to the end of your road. The chilling words slithered through her defenses, gripping her gut with leaden certainty. She could feel the weight of despair closing in as reality warped around her again. Where was the exit? Was the light even real, or just another cruel trick? As they plunged forward into the void, a deep, throaty growl resonated from behind. You cannot escape us, Sarah. You must face the truth. What truth? Awaited them, lurking in the darkness, waiting to devour them whole. Sarah could feel the shadows closing in, limbs reaching, hearts pounding, as fear wrestled against hope. And as the shimmering light flickered precariously, she was left with one question. What would she be willing to sacrifice to save her children? The air grew thick, almost electric, around Sarah and her boys. She could feel the presence of the shadows swirling, their sinister forms shifting and undulating like smoke. Each dark figure exuded a chill that seeped into her skin, drawing the warmth from their bodies. Breathing felt laborious, as if the very atmosphere was shrinking, tightening around her throat. Mommy, I can't breathe, Jacob gasped, his small lungs struggling against the oppressive weight of fear. Hold on, darling. Close your eyes. Just close your eyes and trust me, she urged, desperately trying to hold onto the shred of hope clinging to the flickering light. The shadows cackled again, their laughter resonating through the void. You think this can protect you? A larger specter formed, looming above them. Its skin was dark as night, eyes gleaming with malevolence. You cannot shield them from the truth. No, Sarah shouted, her voice raw. You want to take them. She could feel her heart pounding, a frantic drum echoing in the silence of the void. With each beat, visions of her past flickered in front of her, her failures, her girlhood memories twisted into nightmares. She tried to shake them away, focusing only on the two small boys before her. Look away, she commanded, stepping back as the dark shapes charged closer, their movements erratic and wild. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of something beyond them, a pinprick of brightness, pulsating, like a star desperately trying to shine through a storm. There, we have to get there. But as she moved toward it, the ground trembled violently, and shadowy arms reached out, grabbing at her, dragging her into the black abyss. Sarah! Micah's terrified scream sent shockwaves through her. She felt the grip of despair trying to pull her down. Help us! No. She twisted away, adrenaline surging through her veins. She pulled Jacob and Micah closer, unwilling to let them slip away. Stay with me. Hold on to me. They formed a small circle, clinging to each other, desperately fighting the darkness that stretched to engulf them. The whispers morphed into a howling cacophony, each sound wrapping around them like chains. They tugged at her sanity, clawing away her resolve. Face your failures, the shadows hissed. Embrace the darkness. Never, she screamed, steeling herself against the onslaught. I am their mother. I will protect them. With a fierce determination, she lunged into the flickering light, dragging her boys with her. The shadows shrieked, a primal fury rising as they lunged forward, just a second too late. The light expanded, swallowing them whole as darkness raged at the edges. Sarah felt her mind slipping, her grip on reality becoming more tenuous. They fell into the brightness, tumbling downward until they landed hard on cool, solid ground. Are we safe? Jacob whimpered, his voice trembling. I don't know, Sarah replied, peering into the bright expanse around them. It felt softer but still suffused with a residual fear, lingering like a haunting melody. The shadows were gone, but the whispers still echoed in her mind, oppressive and insistent. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. An ominous hush followed, a stillness that felt wrong. The flickering light dimmed to a feeble glow. They were in another place, an abandoned mansion cloaked in shadows, dust motes dancing in the air like lost souls. "What is this?" Micah stammered, taking in the crumbling walls and peeling paint. "I don't know," Sarah said, unease creeping over her like a wet blanket. "But we have to be careful. This might not be a loud crash," echoed from within the house, sending chills down her spine. Mommy Jacob's voice trembled, clinging to her leg. "What was that?" Micah whispered, eyes wide, scanning their surroundings. Before Sarah could respond, a figure appeared at the far end of the hall, a shadow-like apparition, barely visible but radiating an unsettling energy. Her heart raced. "We need to move. Now." They turned to run, but as they did, the door slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside the mansion. A low murmur filled the space, words that curled around them like a noose. "Welcome, Sarah, welcome back." The darkness coiled tighter around her, the weight of the past slamming into her like a freight train. What did it mean? Who was waiting inside this haunted place? And then, chilling laughter erupted around them, echoing off the crumbling walls, and Sarah realized they weren't alone. The horrifying truth settled in her gut. Escape had never been within her grasp. What had she truly unleashed upon her family? The walls of the mansion seemed to pulse, a living entity wrapping around them in a suffocating embrace. Sarah's breath quickened as panic surged within her. "Jacob, Micah, stay close." The air grew colder, curling around them like grasping fingers. Every path ahead was wrapped in shadows, swirling to cover better their escape routes. Echoes of laughter still bounced off the walls, reverberating until it felt like it was coming from inside her own head. They ran deeper into the hall. Floorboards creaked underfoot, a familiar sound of impending doom. Each thidder of a footstep echoed, threatening to reveal their location to something lurking in the darkness. "Why are we here?" Micah pressed, his voice shaking, each word a tiny plea for reasoning. "I don't know," Sarah whispered back, glancing over her shoulder. The figure at the hall's end shifted, mere glimpses blending into shadows. But she could feel its eyes piercing through her desperately. "What if it wants to hurt us?" Jacob's small voice quivered, threading fear into her heart. "No, we're going to find a way out," she asserted, pushing forward, remembering that light they had escaped from before. It had to be somewhere. They turned a corner, entering a room filled with dust-covered furniture. Layers of neglect blanketed everything, remnants of a life long abandoned. Old photographs stared back at them, the faces twisted and blurred by time, hinting at tragedies buried deep. Suddenly, a chilling whisper slipped through the silence, a soft, malicious voice. "Sarah, your past calls to you, stop it." Sarah cried, clenching her fists at her sides, willing her fears to remain silent. This place scratched at her memories, each word sending daggers through her resolve. In that moment of hesitation, the presence from the hallway surged forward. Black shadows began to spill into the room like an inky flood. Every corner darkened as dread filled the space, making her heart race. The shadows echoed, tauntingly mimicking her voice. "You remember, don't you? You cannot escape what you've done. Get away from us." Micah shouted, flinging his arm out toward the approaching darkness. "Micah, no." Sarah pulled him back just in time, but dread tightened as frigid air enveloped them, threatening to swallow them whole. A horrifying revelation struck Sarah. She remembered fragments now. Betrayals, lost love, the terrible mistakes that had led her to this moment. The shadows were here to reveal her failures, to feed on her guilt, and it was designed to tear her apart. "Listen to me. You're stronger than they are," Sarah urged her boys, attempting to mask her terror with a few shaky words of encouragement. "We can face this together." But as the shadows intensified, they pinched inward, growing tighter, a relentless wave of despair. Sarah's heart pounded, guilt eating at her sanity. "You brought this upon us. Let us go," she screamed defiantly, summoning whatever power she still possessed. The shadows hesitated, swirling uncertainly. Then, a sickening low growl bounced off the walls, and from within the mass of shadow, a face began to take shape, twisted, hollow, with smoldering eyes that seemed to burn through her. Your family must face the truth, Sarah. Only then can you break free. A sudden realization washed over her. This wasn't just about her past, it was about her family's survival. Jacob, Micah, we must confront what we left behind. Together, she yelled, gripping their hands fiercely. But before they could gather their thoughts, the room plunged into darkness. The oppressive gloom wrapped around them. Wrapping tighter, Sarah's blood ran cold as the shadows shifted, pulling her boys out of reach. No, get away from them, she shouted, the world spinning violently around her. The weight of her mistakes bore down harder than ever, and with a surge of fear and adrenaline, she steeled herself against the fear clawing at her mind. But what had she really awakened in that mansion? The shadows whispered again, and a figure stepped forward, cloaked in darkness. Sarah's breath caught. Are you ready to face your sins? Then, just as the air thickened heavier, a door creaked open in the distance, leading into a blinding light, beckoning with an unsettling allure. Go. But did she dare step through, or would they fall deeper into the spiraling despair of darkness? What lay on the other side awaited them with an unknown terror that could shatter everything they thought they knew. The shadows flickered and trembled as the figure loomed closer. A pulse of dread surged through Sarah's veins. She could feel the weight of its eyes piercing through her. Face your sins. The voice was melodic yet twisted, wrapping around her syllables like a choking vine. Mom. Jacob's voice trembled, clinging to the edge of uncertainty. The moment felt electric, as if time had stopped and the air had turned stale. The boy's hands locked tighter into hers, small anchors in a sea of chaos. Step forward, the shadow commanded, its tendrils stretching outwards, beckoning them into its darkness. You are too heavy with regret to flee. She took a deep breath, forcing her feet to move, pulling Jacob and Micah along, their small bodies pressed against her. Each step toward the entity felt like walking on glass, ready to shatter at any moment. Just don't let go, she whispered, more to herself than to them. As they approached, ghostly whispers flickered around her, echoing with the almost familiar cadence of laughter interspersed with cries. The memories crashed into her lost birthdays, missed chances. Every failure returned, seeking refuge in the recesses of her mind. She clenched her jaw, pushing the thoughts away like shadows trying to consume light. They stepped into the blinding light, an unwilling embrace. Instantly, everything shifted. They found themselves in a long corridor, the air thick with dust and time. But now, the walls were lined with more than just remnants. Photographs hung askew, faces familiar but twisted in desperation. Each reflected horror bore into her. Look closer, the dark figure whispered, slinking back into the depths, leaving only the glimmering light illuminating their path. Your past unravels. Why did we come here? Micah quivered, glancing nervously at the portraits lining the walls, his innocent mind struggling with the weight of reality. Because Sarah took a shaky breath, feeling memories claw at her from every corner. I thought it would be safe. Jacob rubbed his arm anxiously. But it's not. We have to leave. Then we must unearth what we buried, she said, steeling herself. We can't escape this unless we face it. Suddenly, laughter erupted again, sharp and slicing, piercing through the quiet. The boys recoiled as the laughter morphed into a cacophony of painful memories pouring from the walls. Each portrait seemed to come alive, eyes tracking their every move, fingers clawing as if trying to escape their canvas prisons. A blur enveloped them, ripping Sarah from her boys' sides. It sent her tumbling backward into the unknown. No, Jacob, Micah, she screamed, her voice echoing in the dim corridor. She watched as shadowy figures erupted from the walls, reaching for her sons, eyes filled with insanity and sorrow. Desperation clawed at her throat as she scrambled to her feet. She lunged forward, the figures closing in on Jacob and Micah, but the light flickered, pulsing like a heartbeat, urging her on. Through the door, Sarah? A familiar voice echoed deep within her. It was her mother's voice, long buried yet unmistakably potent. Your truth lies beyond. Fear blazed inside her. With every step, the shadows lunged, snapping at her heels, whispering her flaws, her regrets. Mom, help, Jacob called, trembling hands reaching toward her. "No," Sarah screeched, pushing forward even as the figures swarmed, clawing at her with icy fingers. Everything within her screamed for her to flee, yet something anchored her a desperate hope for redemption, for resolution. In the middle of the corridor, a glint caught her eye, a door, slightly ajar, beckoning with the allure of salvation. "Go. We need to go there," Sarah cried, sprinting toward the door, its promise shimmering under the weight of her fears. But before she could reach it, a figure burst from the shadows, blocking her path. Twisted and grotesque, it snarled her name, words dripping with venom. "You think you can just pass?" Sarah's heart thudded in her chest. She shook her head fiercely, almost pleading. "Let them go. This is your final chance, Sarah," the figure hissed. Teeth bared. "Face your truth, or they will belong to me." The door loomed behind her, the light beckoning, but terror constricted around her, pleading with her to turn back. She had to make a choice. "Are you ready?" the figure challenged. Only time would tell if Sarah could face the darkness entwined with her very being. Would she step through the light and unravel the truth, or would the shadows consume her family, leaving nothing but echoes behind? With a deep breath, she reached for the door and pushed. The door creaked open like a coffin, swinging gently on rusty hinges. A blinding light poured through, bathing Sarah in warmth, a pulsating glow that promised safety. Yet behind her, the growling figure loomed, its voice a sinister whisper wrapped in madness. "You can't hide there forever." With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah propelled herself forward. She felt the cool air rush against her skin as she stepped into the light, dragging her sons behind her. The world around her shimmered, as if she had crossed a threshold into another realm. They landed not on solid ground, but in an endless, swirling mist. The boys stumbled beside her, eyes wide with terror, their small hands trembling in her grasp. "Where are we?" Jacob gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Keep close," she snapped, scanning the fog for any sign of the sinister figure. The shadows were behind them, but this place felt different, strangely alive. The mist pulsed, as if breathing, coiling around them like an ethereal serpent, both inviting and menacing. Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed through the expanse, pulling at the edges of her sanity. It pierced the thick fog and reverberated in her bones. "Welcome home." Sarah, panic clawed at her heart. "No, not here," she murmured, memories slipping into view unbidden. Echoes of laughter, cries, and shadows entwined among half-formed visions danced around them. Each flickering image was a fragment of her past, building a funeral pyre of regret before her very eyes. "Mom, make it stop," Micah whimpered, his knuckles going white as he clung to her leg. With each second spent in the fog, the shadows threatened to hold her down, to drown her in her own guilt. She steeled herself. "We can't stay here. Face what you've done." The voice taunted, reverberating through the mist. "You think you can escape your demons? Stop it," Sarah yelled, the sound ripping from her throat like a raw wound. She felt a swell of defiance, a primal urge to break free from the bonds of her past. "I won't submit to this." In a rush of determination, Sarah fueled herself with thoughts of Jacob and Micah. She'd do anything to protect them. They deserved more than this torment. "We're leaving," she shouted, her voice echoing in the clutches of despair. But as she turned, the mist thickened, coiling like serpents around her feet. The ground seemed to shift beneath her, a living mass of emotions that twisted like roots, choking her resolve. Suddenly, shapes began to emerge from the fog, figures now gliding toward them, faces contorted in anguish. Startled, Sarah recognized the features. Friends, family, lost to the burdens of grief. Their eyes bore into her, accusatory and sorrowful, and the regret surged back anew. "Help us! You left us!" They cried hollowly, voices merging into a dismal harmony that wrapped around her like a straitjacket. "No, you can't blame me." Tears streamed down her cheeks as fear consumed her. "I didn't want this. Your choices led you here." The figures advanced, swallowed by the fog, hallowed breaths mixing with their despair. As they neared, the boys whimpered, backing up against her. Jacob's face was flushed with fright, while Micah buried his head against her side, trembling. Sarah's heart raced. The specters were relentless, and she could feel the air grow thick with the weight of her choices. With every echo of their pained cries, her grip on reality thinned. But in the midst of chaos, a burning similar to courage ignited within her. "Get back. I won't lose you," she screamed, pushing herself against the tide of regret clawing at her sanity. Suddenly, the mist parted as the light flickered behind her, and for one fleeting moment, clarity shone through. The door pulsed softly, promising an end to the torment, an escape back to safety. But what awaited them outside? In a heartbeat, Sarah realized the shadows closing in were no longer merely taunting. They were hungry for her doubt, her despair. If she turned back now, everything would be lost. Which path do we choose? She asked herself, sensing that whichever choice she made would sever the ties binding her to the past forever. As the spirits surged forward, Sarah made her grip firm on Jacob and Micah. Together, they would either usher in a new dawn or fall victim to the darkness. Resolute, she raised her chin, filled with dread and resolve, and shouted, "We face this together." Then she turned towards the door, ready to plunge into the unknown waiting just beyond. The moment Sarah pushed through the door, a wave of warmth crashed over them, swallowing the echoes of despair. The shimmering light enveloped her and her boys like a loving embrace, wrapping them in safety. Suddenly, the oppressive shadows began to fade, retreating like waves receding from shore. The three of them stumbled into a familiar place, a sun-drenched park, vibrant greens stretching far and wide, laughter dancing on the breeze. It was a stark contrast to the dark mansion they had just escaped. Sarah looked around, her heart aching with relief. There, children played, parents chatted, and the scent of fresh grass filled the air. "Mommy, we're back." Jacob's eyes sparkled with hope, running towards the slides, his laughter infectious. Micah grabbed her hand tightly. "Is it really safe this time?" "It has to be," Sarah replied, forcing a smile despite the tight knot of concern still lingering in her chest. She took a breath, letting the fresh air fill her lungs, grounding herself in the moment. They were out of the shadows, yes, but she knew the work wasn't done. They still had to confront what had happened. As they approached a nearby bench to catch their breath, Sarah took a long look at her boys. "You did so well back there," she said, pride swelling within her. "You stayed with me. We faced it together. But what was that place?" Micah's voice wavered as he settled beside her, his innocent eyes full of questions. "That place was a reflection of our fears, a darkness that fed on what we hid inside," Sarah explained gently, brushing a hand tenderly through his hair. "But we don't need to hide anymore. Our family is stronger than that fear." "Will the shadows come back?" Jacob asked, his face shadowed with worry. "No," she answered firmly, shaking her head. "We've seen them for what they are. They wanted to tear us apart, but we held on. That's what really matters." Her voice cracked slightly as she looked across the park, knowing deep down that they would always have to be wary of shadows lurking in the corners of their lives. Yet there was also a new light and understanding that she could teach her boys how to face their own fears, together. "Mommy?" Jacob's soft voice broke into her thoughts. "Can we go on the swings now?" Sarah chuckled, wiping the tears from her face, a mix of joy and relief flooding through her. "Of course. Let us make some happy memories, shall we?" The two boys cheered, racing toward the swings, their laughter ringing like sweet music in the crisp air. As Sarah watched them, the worry in her heart ebbed slowly away. She drew in a deep breath, allowing the beautiful chaos of childhood to wrap around her like a warm blanket. A sense of peace settled over her. But she couldn't ignore the past, the darkness she had faced. It would be there, reminding her, warning her. In this moment of serenity, Sarah understood that overcoming their fears was a journey, a path needing constant courage and vigilance. But today was a step into the light. And as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of gold and orange, a weight lifted off her shoulders. She turned her focus back to her boys, joy filling her heart like a bright comet streaking across a midnight sky. "Hey guys," she called, determination shining in her eyes. "Let us make a promise. Whenever we face darkness, we won't run from it. We'll stand together and shine brighter." Their excited cheers filled the air, mingling with the whispers of the wind. They were a family, a powerful, united force, and no shadow could dim the light they created together. As they played, she felt lighter with every laugh, every swing into the sky, weaving a tapestry of joy that shattered any lingering darkness. They were free, if only for today, and that was enough. So much uncertainty lingered in the world, but together they could face whatever came next. Because as long as they held on to each other, they would be strong, daring to walk into the light. This was the promise she would carry in her heart forever. Now, before you leave this space of hope and courage, there's a sense of urgency that you need to heed. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep your heart racing. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, because every click helps bring more incredible tales to life. And don't just sit there, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear your thoughts. Lastly, if you know even one friend who needs to see this conclusion, you must share this video with at least 5 friends. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your support means the world, and only true fans understand how vital it is. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.